This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
When the whole family comes together to watch the game, nobody wants to miss a second of the action to run to the grocery store. With Instacart, you can get all your weekly groceries in as fast as an hour. Less time shopping means more game time. Let's go. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. $10 minimum per order. Additional terms apply.
It's time. It's time. Time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
49ers Web Zone, No Huddle Podcast, part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Al Sacco with Brian Renick. I hope everybody had a really Merry Christmas up until 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 Pacific, when the 49ers took the field and kind of got punched in the mouth by the Ravens. I'm hurting a little bit from the game. I'm hurting a little bit because, listen, I had a festive Christmas, and I'm a little hungover today. But and I just, as that game went on, I was like, I think I'm done drinking today. And then I was like, maybe I'm not. So, but Brian, I'll tell you what, I've been talking for a while that this Ravens team scares me. Yeah. And I think you saw why in this game. The D is tough on quarterbacks. They make life uncomfortable for the offense. They force a lot of turnovers. And that's what happened in this game. They made Brock Purdy look like a shell of himself, or maybe Brock Purdy was the reason Brock Purdy looked like a shell of himself. He played his worst game. The defense got put in some pretty rough spots, and I thought the defense looked a little flat too. It was just not the game I saw the 49ers coming out and playing on Christmas night.
Yeah, we had Jason Lockenfor on to preview this game, and both of us said afterwards, like, hey, I feel a lot better about this game after talking to Jason. Jason seemed to think that this game was set up pretty well for the 49ers because the biggest weakness for that Baltimore defense was their run defense. And so when you are going up against the arguably one of the best running teams in the NFL, you think, all right, well, if you can't defend the run, that's going to be a tough game for you. It felt like the 49ers got punched in the mouth. As a fan, it felt like I got punched in the dick. That's what this game made me feel like.
It was tough to watch, man.
Yeah, because I went into it with pretty high expectations, and I know we're going to get into it, but there's just a few things that I found baffling. And when I find something that baffling, I just start to try and think about reasons why, and we'll get into that. But, to me, the biggest thing with this game, the biggest thing that baffled me specifically was the offensive game plan. I don't understand it. I don't understand what Kyle Shanahan was thinking when he put that game plan together. It almost felt like I don't know if he outthought himself. I don't know if he thought like he was trying to prove something about Brock or prove something about himself in terms of going against the best pass defense in the NFL. And like, was it like an ego thing? He's like, yeah, well, they're the best pass defense, but they haven't played us. So watch this. We're going to throw all over them, because it just didn't make sense. They didn't play 49ers football from the jump. It wasn't even like they got behind and then had to throw. I understand that, but
right.
They opened the game with, I want to say, 8 straight passes before their first run or something along those lines. It might've been even more egregious than that. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. And that's where it's frustrating. 'Cause I'll tell you what, man, my Christmas involved quite a bit of 49ers gear, and I was geared up in my living room with my McCaffrey jersey on, which I already had, but my new gold starter jacket, my new 49ers hat. I got this sweatshirt as well. I switched out at halftime to the sweatshirt just to see if I could change some mojo or something. But all day I was prepared for that game. And that is what I was looking forward to for Christmas. And then the Ravens just played the role of the Grinch and absolutely ruined it for me.
In grand scheme of things, does this game matter? It might not, because the 49ers, if they win their next two, they still have the number one seed. They have to beat the Commanders. They have to beat the Rams, which, Rams are playing well, but still the Niners should be able to beat them.
Yep.
And then you look at the number one seed, and then they still seem to match up well with the NFC teams. And when you get to the Super Bowl, we'll see what happens. So if they still make this run, nobody's going to give a shit about this game. Just like when the Niners lost to the Eagles in 1994, 48 week, whatever it was, week 4, week 5. Nobody gives a shit. Yeah, nobody gives a shit, right? It's just a bad week, and that's very well what it could have been. So grand scheme of things, we'll see. But in reaction to this game, there were a few things that, you start to let things creep into your head when, they get down again and they kind of just, it snowballed. It looked like a lot of times to me, Brian, it was just different people in the 49ers uniforms. Like, it was the 49ers, but it wasn't Purdy, and it wasn't Debo, and it wasn't Kittle. There's other people in those uniforms. It didn't seem like them a lot. And I agreed with you. And listen, Kyle Shanahan's not the one who threw the first interception of the game.
No.
When Purdy should not have thrown the ball to Debo. He was late, and I think Hamilton picked it off. But you talked about the play calling and stuff. I just thought your first down inside the 20, you haven't run the ball yet. That's a perfect spot to get yourself in second and manageable. Give the ball to McCaffrey in your 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, whatever. So I didn't love that call. Again, not Kyle's fault that Purdy threw the pick, but you're right. I felt like Purdy looked shaky from the jump, and not all the interceptions were his fault. Like, the first one was.
Yeah.
The second one was not. It got batted. Well, the other 3, I do put on him, especially that third one. And Brock even said it himself. Like, he said, I saw the flags down.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the linemen. I saw their body language. I could tell it wasn't on us. He's like, I got to throw that ball away. I can't make that worse. And he's right. And that's what he was doing in the losing streak. Like, okay, I'm trying to make too much happen, and he forces the ball.
Yeah.
So some of those other throws, he just didn't play a very smart game. He didn't look like himself. It looked like there was somebody else in the uniform. And I do want to say this to you, and I guess I'm interested to hear your reaction on it. So I'm a big you do or you don't guy.
Yeah.
In the Niners, again, this may not matter. They may not even be behind again the rest of the season. But what we've seen is when they do get behind or things start to go really wrong, it snowballs, and they can't seem to kind of get themselves out of it. They're front runners, essentially. They're better when they play from ahead.
Yeah.
They're kind of built that way, I guess.
Yep.
But what I mean by I'm a you do or you don't guy. Again, we're talking Super Bowl here. We're talking championship. So when I think back, Joe Montana, let's stay with the 49ers. Joe Montana is a legend because he did. When he was down against the Bengals in Super Bowl 23, Montana and Walsh put together that drive to win.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. If you look at the recent Super Bowl with the Niners and Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan, they just didn't get it done in the fourth quarter. You do or you don't. If they got it done there, Garoppolo might still be the quarterback here. Didn't happen. This team has to do it, and they're going to get tested, and we'll find out if they're going to be a team that does or doesn't. The next 6 weeks or so will tell us. But when I see games like this and it continues to snowball, I do get worried if they're in a tough spot in the playoffs or they get down by 14 points. Is the game just over? That's the worry, I think, right now with this team.
Yeah, and you had brought it up earlier that Mike Sando had tweeted out something in regards to, Kyle Shanahan is now 0-39 when trailing by 8 or more entering the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And, he put that in context that the best team in the NFL at coming from behind by 8 or more is the Kansas City Chiefs. And their winning percentage on that is still 300, which means 7 out of 10 times they're not coming back. And they have the best quarterback on the planet right now. And that's largely what you lean on, obviously, when you're behind, right? You have to throw the ball. And I think more than that, and I've said this before on this show, Kyle Shanahan's offense is not predicated on a traditional drop back passing game, right? Their passing game is largely predicated on deception and play action, right? Which is what play action is, deception. But it's passing from formations that make it look like you're running, right? Like that's their bread and butter. And that's not what a traditional drop back passing system looks like. And so I think it's a bit of a combination of not having tremendous quarterback play outside of being efficient within Kyle Shanahan's offense, right? And then also, coming from behind is hard. It's hard in the NFL. It's not an easy thing to do. Most teams can't do it. The wild aspect of it is the 0 and 39. And it's I think once you get that 1, then you stop talking about it, because now it's not that glaring 0, because again, the best team in the NFL is 300 in those situations, right? They lose 7 out of 10 times. So again, it's not a situation where most teams are able to come from behind. Most teams aren't. That's hard to do. And so I don't think it's as glaring of an indictment on Kyle Shanahan as some people like to make it seem. But you're right. They do have to do it. And until they do it, it's going to be a talking point.
Yeah. And you think back to when the Niners made the Super Bowl in 2012 with Kaepernick, they were down 14-0 in that game against the Falcons. They may end up in a situation like that again. What if they're playing Philly and, Philly scores on the opening drive and then something fluky happens and you're down 10-0, 14-0. They may be in a situation like that again. And so what Sando said about that, I don't know if he's 0-38 or 0-39, Kyle, but either way, he hasn't won down 8+ points. So this has to be, the stats that Sando's putting up has to be since Kyle became the coach, so 2017. All teams, 7%, 98 wins, 1,337 losses, and 4 ties. Like you said, Kansas City is the best at 30%. They're 6-14. The next is Green Bay. They're 7-34. Then you have teams like, for context, Seattle's 1-38. Carolina's 1-58. Colts are 1-36-1. Baltimore, one of the, typically one of the better teams in the league, 2-22, down 8+ points. That's with Lamar and John Harbaugh. Dallas 2-37, New England 3-35. No one's
doing
well in these situations, but it's just, again, it's the 0. Like you said, he hasn't done it, so it becomes a talking point. And we even mentioned it. I think he mentioned it to Brian Baldinger, and he was like, "Wow, really?" He's like, "I didn't know that." And he's like, "Well, there's something there." So, but Sando said the same thing you did. The weakness is drop back passing. When they get in those situations, they haven't been able to do that. And look, Brock's been the most prolific quarterback this team's had 20 years. Just hasn't worked out yet. Doesn't mean it never will, but until that happens, it's going to be a question mark. It's the same thing like we said with Jake Moody. Until he makes get a big kick in a big spot, it'll be a question mark. You just have to wait and see. But again, this could all mean nothing. Right. The Niners may blow the next 5 teams out to play and then win the Super Bowl. It may not matter. But for right now, last night was a little bit scary. The defense too. The defense put in a lot of bad situations. Yes. So I'm not going to act like they got completely destroyed or anything like that. But
they didn't play well.
They didn't play well. No, they looked a little flat. I had no idea why they put Jason Verrett in last night. Why? Like, I don't understand in that situation. I don't know to put him in. But they looked a little flat. They look like they're missing Eric Armstead. We've always talked about Armstead does more than you see on the stat sheet. Hargrave's banged up. Past few weeks, if I'm worried about anything, I think the offense is going to bounce back. We'll talk about the offensive line in a little while, but what you're seeing right now with the defense, that is a little bit scary because, again, the Rams can steal one from you. Yeah. They're really moving the ball. And then, look, they absolutely owned Philly and Dallas when they played them, but your defense has to play like your defense. So, again, it could just be an end of the season little lull. We saw it last year in the Raiders game. The defense looked awful, and then they were fine. So we'll see. But, the past couple of weeks, it's been a little iffy there.
Yeah, and, again, like you said, I don't know why Jason Verrett was in. I was thrilled to see him in, like, just for Jason Verrett. Weird. But it was weird. And then, everyone will point to that touchdown. But if you watch the replay of that touchdown, there literally wasn't anything that Jason Verrett could have done differently. That touchdown wasn't on Jason Verrett. It wasn't that he blew coverage. It was on Chase Young, who didn't maintain his contain and Lamar Jackson scrambled out. And once you get into a scramble drill, all bets are off, right? Like,
especially with
the
Lamar,
receiver is going to have an advantage every single time, because that's just the nature of that situation. So again, I didn't blame Jason Verrett for that touchdown, because if you watch the replay, which they showed on TV, I mean, he had sticky coverage on him until he, I think it was Bateman recognized, or Zay Flowers, I don't know, whoever it was, recognized that that Lamar was scrambling, and he adjusted his route accordingly and was open for the touchdown. I mean, it is what it is. I think, we talked about Brock's interceptions. Obviously 4 interceptions is not ideal. And that the first one was his fault. The next 2, I don't put on him. That's just the second one is just a great play by that defensive back, and a lucky bounce. And then the third interception, again, bounced out of the hands of the receiver and into into the waiting hands of just somebody standing there. So again, I don't necessarily fault him for all of them. Again, the decision-making part of it, as you said, for that fourth one, that one makes sense. What's interesting to me is that in the 4 losses that the 49ers have had this season, the offense has scored 17 points exactly, right? This game was 19, but there was a safety. So again, there's something there. A pattern like that doesn't just happen. But I think, to me, if we're coming out and we're saying, like, who shares the largest responsibility for this loss, I'm putting that on Kyle Shanahan, and I'm putting it on Kyle Shanahan, the offensive play caller, not Kyle Shanahan, the head coach. This defense is most vulnerable against the run. They are most effective against the pass. So to come out into this game with a game plan that revolves around the passing game just seemed like, again, like an ego move. Like he was trying to prove something. It's like it's kind of like somebody, I can't remember who, but I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if it was just somebody that's a mutual, or if it was more of a talking head, but it was almost reminiscent of Pete Carroll in that Super Bowl, when you have Marshawn Lynch, and yet you're allowing the game to hinge on a passing play with Russell Wilson. Like, you're trying to show, hey, Russell Wilson is the guy. And so I don't know if it was that, or I'm hard pressed to think that this is the case. But one of the things that I thought of in the moment was, is this Kyle Shanahan? Again, this would be ego, but is this Kyle Shanahan saying, look, I'm pretty confident that we're going to see this team again in the Super Bowl, because I'm confident that my team's going to make it to the Super Bowl. Right? Like, ego saying, like, there's no one in the NFC that can hang with us. So, I'm more concerned with who we're going to play in the Super Bowl, and this is probably the team we're going to play. Like, did he put together a game plan that he would then be able to just go against when they see him again in the Super Bowl, as a way to kind of catch them off guard in the biggest game, rather than this game, which, as we said, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of wanting and trying to win a Super Bowl, which is the ultimate goal. Losing this game doesn't do anything for them, anything negative for them, outside of they got embarrassed on national TV. So, was he getting a little bit too cute in forecasting? So I don't know. But what I do know is his offensive game plan made 0 sense, and they got their ass kicked because of it. And that's, I think, to me, the biggest disappointment.
Yeah. And again, it was just strange that, like you said, maybe it was a thing where he just came out when he just felt so confident about his team that he was like, you know what, screw it. We could throw on anybody, and that's what we're going to do. But, you live and you learn, I guess. Again, I'm not going, don't want to go, like, last night I was pissed. Like, I was watching the game, and, like, I was just pissed. I was pissed because Brock just didn't seem like himself. I was pissed because I thought he was still trying to force balls when he should have learned his lesson weeks ago with it. I was pissed at the game plan. I was pissed that the defense looked flat. But then I'm like, you know what? Like, these games happen. Like you said, this happened on national TV in one of the biggest games of the year. The Niners have passed all their other tests against Dallas, against the Eagles. You know, the Jags game was a big game. They passed it. They failed this one. So, again, big picture, we'll see what it means. I will say this. We've been talking about Purdy MVP, McCaffrey MVP. What the offense really looks different is when Trent Williams is not in the game.
Yep.
Holy shit. There's your difference right there. He was out those 3 games or banged up against the Browns and then out those other couple games. And when he wasn't there last night, like, you noticed it. And I thought when he took Brock out of the game with the stinger, it looked like Brock was okay to come back in. My initial thought was, you know what? I want to see Brock play because I want to see what he's going to do here because it hasn't gone well in the past because he does have 4 interceptions. I want to see him bounce back. I want to see them try to come back in this game. Who gives a shit? Just throw it all out there. But then when you look at what the offensive line was, I feel like maybe that went into Kyle's decision because you had Spencer Burford was playing at one of the tackles. Colton McKivitz moved to left tackle. So Banks was out. Williams was out. Jalen Moore got hurt. Was it Ben Barch was the other?
Ben Barch had to come in when Banks went down. Yeah.
They were going to be calling Sheila Rochelle pretty soon to come in for that game, like the way it was going. So I understand why Kyle took him out after that. In the moment, I'm like, get his ass back out there. Let me try to make a run here. But I understand he's got the stinger. Again, the game in the grand scheme of things really doesn't mean that much. You still control your own destiny. So keep your quarterback healthy. Turn the page. Joe Torre, I've mentioned this before on the show, always just talk with the Yankees. When the Yankees would get blown out 15-2, he'd be like, you know what? It's a turn the page game. It's not who we are.
Yeah.
It happened. You turn the page, you forget about it. I feel like that's what the Niners have to do with this one. It's just, it happened. It's over. Kick the shit out of Washington, and it's all systems go from there.
Yeah, and I appreciate, the leaders of the team basically saying the same thing after the game. Fred Warner said, look, we got to watch the tape. We got to get better. It just is what it is. We'll fix the mistakes. And Brock Purdy said, I've got to look at myself in the mirror and, figure out how to be better in those situations. Nobody came out and was like, this isn't, this wasn't our fault. Like, we're blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They recognize that they got their ass kicked. They wore it. And now it's time to move on. And the other thing is you got to do that because it's a short week, right? You've got a short week to prepare for Washington. And they already opened as 13.5-point favorites in that game, which, there's no reason why they shouldn't beat this Commanders team. And then, you hope that the Eagles lose. Will they? Probably not, but you hope that they do. And then you hope that I guess you got to win the next 2 games because unfortunately there's 3 teams. There's 3 teams that only have 4 teams that have 4 losses now. The 49ers, the Lions, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. The Lions and the Cowboys play each other this week, which means that one of them is going to get a loss, but the other one is not. And then, the Eagles, and if the Eagles lost a game, then they would be out. But whoever wins between Detroit and Dallas still has a shot at the 1 seed. So, this was your one mulligan. You don't get another one if you want the 1 seed. You got to take care of business these next 2 games so you can get that bye. Home field advantage. I don't care about home field advantage. We just got absolutely destroyed at home. So, I don't care about home field advantage. What I care about is the bye and resting this team because this team looks like it needs some rest and they've got to dig deep for these next 2 games so that they can. And then again, the second season starts and none of this matters.
Yeah. And they'll likely need that last game against the Rams now. So it's not like you can rest people or play your starters a half or whatever. Looks like they're going to need it. I think another reason why this feels so magnified is because of everything you're going to deal with Brock now. You're going to have people coming out saying, oh, I told you so, oh, he's a fraud or whatever, which again, to me, he's already done enough where he's a very good quarterback.
Yeah.
Now he lost the MVP in this game.
Yes.
Because I thought the one thing he couldn't do was have an absolute disaster in this game. If he didn't have a disaster, he would have won the MVP. If he just played average, I still think he would have gotten it. But he did the one thing he couldn't do. It was an absolute disaster. He's not winning the MVP. I can't see. There's just we're already too many questions surrounding him to put that he's going to get that now, whether they give it to Lamar. Although if Lamar shits the bed against the Dolphins, then what do you do next week? But I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be Purdy. But what it's magnified because there's all that talk now. There's all the talk around Purdy because everybody's still waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though I don't think it's going to. Again, second-year quarterback, played a really good defense, and he played like shit. It happens. If Josh Allen threw 4 picks or Patrick Mahomes threw 4 picks or anybody else, people would be like, it was an off game or whatever. They'll be back. With Purdy, it's not that. You have, the Steven Ruizes and everybody else, the ringer people who are going to be like, oh, see, I told you, So you have to deal with that as a Niners fan and the Niners. I don't know when that's going to go away. Maybe if he plays really well for the next 2 years, 3 years, maybe. But at this point, if he has a bad playoff game, people are going to say the same thing, and it'll linger all offseason. Is he the guy type thing, even though he's already played really well in the playoffs? So that magnifies things, and that's frustrating to me that we're still the guy. The guy is a 7th-round draft pick, the last pick in the draft, who pretty much had an MVP caliber season, regardless of what happened last night, and really regardless of what happened in the next 2 games. For most of the season, he had an MVP caliber season, and that it's still getting nitpicked, but it's not going away. It's not.
And I think, unfortunately, it's not going to go away because of who his coach is and what this system is and what this scheme is, and nobody has the the wherewithal to just take this everything away and just be like, look, this guy's playing quarterback at a high level, like regardless of scheme, regardless of anything. And again, like you said, it's because he's the last pick in the draft. He doesn't have a rocket arm. He's not tall. He doesn't, he's not Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson where he's affecting the game with his legs and his arm. Like, it's just, I don't know. We're in an era of football where, again, people think that in order to be an MVP, you've got to be Superman, and just playing within yourself and within your system, which is a good system with playmakers, and just doing your job, right? That's what he's doing. He's doing the job, and that's what I liked about Troy Aikman during the game. Now, granted, this was early in the game before, he threw 4 interceptions. But one of the things he said that I was like, right on Troy, was basically like, he is doing what he's supposed to do. And he said, nobody that has played the position thinks that he isn't great, thinks that he hasn't been doing great.
Yeah, I caught that right at the beginning of the game.
And I was like, oh, right on. Like, that's fantastic, because
the people who know what they're talking about understand what they're saying.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The people who have played the position that know what they're talking about, none of them have said anything bad and have only had good things to say about Brock Purdy. And I was like, sweet, right on, Troy. Which, by the way, I learned last week. I didn't realize this. I never realized Troy Aikman never won an MVP.
Did you ever go back and look at his stats?
Yeah, they're not great.
No,
they're not great at all. He is a Hall of Famer on the back of what he did in the Super Bowls, which is, I understand. I'm not saying that didn't, because he does have some Super Bowl MVPs. So, again, largely if that's the goal, right? If the goal is winning Super Bowls and you've got multiple Super Bowl MVPs, that I think almost outweighs not having a regular season MVP. But that was shocking to me. That was shocking because, again, he was just always talked about as, in his era, the one of, if not the best quarterback in the NFL, or it was like him and Favre, and then, Young and, but yeah, it was crazy.
It's funny. Yeah. So he made the Pro Bowl 6 years in a row. So 1991, he threw for 2,700 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. 1992, this was his best statistical season, probably. 3,400 yards, 23 TDs, 14 picks. 1993, he was an MVP candidate. He threw for 3,100 yards with 15 touchdown passes. Made the Pro Bowl again in 1994 with 2,600 yards passing, 13 TDs, and 12 picks. 3,300 in 1995 yards passing, 16 TDs, 7 picks. Somehow made the Pro Bowl again in 1996. Threw for 3,126 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. So yeah, go and look up Troy Aikman's stats. They were not pretty. When you look at Steve Young, who was doing amazing things statistically for that era. Yeah, Troy's weren't great. I do want to talking about stats. I don't love doing this after a loss, but we've been talking about it all year, so it's only fair to follow up on this stuff. So Brock, shitty as he played, he's only the third 49ers quarterback to throw for over 4,000 yards now. So the Niners franchise record is Jeff Garcia in one season, 4,278. Brock, like I said, is 4,050. He's probably going to shatter that. And he'll probably break it in 16 games and then shatter it in the 17th one. You would think, if everything stays status quo. Yeah. Looks like they're definitely going to get the 4 players with 1,000 yards each with 1,000 yards from scrimmage. McCaffrey's got 1932 with 2 games left, which is absurd. Ayuk 1203. Deebo Samuel with rushing and receiving is at 1,013, and Kittle's at 993 right now. So Kittle's got like 6 yards rushing or something like that, but Kittle's going to get another 1,000-yard receiving season. So he's really, for all the talk about him, is he done and he's not putting up the same stats anymore. He's having an absolute phenomenal year. So that's been fun too. Again, this sucks. This doesn't feel good, but at the end of the day, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to have a chance to win the Super Bowl, and it's been a fun season. Even just statistically, It's fun to watch your team go out there and guys to put up awesome stats. Like, that's fun. So it's been cool, and it's been a season to enjoy.
Well, and let's be real. They're still 11-4. They're still 11-4, and still the number 1 seed in the NFC. Yeah, so
it's all good, man.
Again, like, we don't. The goal is the Super Bowl, and they are still in a tremendous position to make the game. And I still think that regardless of what happened against the Ravens last night, I still think they have more than enough to be a Super Bowl champion. So that is ultimately the goal, and that's really all I care about. And maybe this is a good thing where we stop focusing on, is Brock Purdy an MVP? Right? Like, that talk is over now. And now it's, that was just a distraction. What really matters is the Super Bowl. And we probably should stop caring about any of that other stuff, because it doesn't matter. If Brock Purdy wins the MVP, or Christian McCaffrey wins the MVP, but the 49ers lose in the NFC Championship game, or the 49ers lose in the Super Bowl, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care that happened. What they're going to care about is that they still didn't win a Super Bowl. And then the conversation becomes, look, Kyle Shanahan can't win a Super Bowl even with an MVP and a stacked roster, right? Then that's where the conversation goes. So, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that we don't have to focus on that anymore. And I know that this game happened much later in the season than that 40-8 game for the 94 team, but I think we've seen this team refocus, and when they are healthy and when they are all out there and refocused, they're pretty tough to beat. So I think this is probably a galvanizing moment for the team. Trent said after the game that he's going to be good. So I'm assume he'll be back out there. I think Trent Williams is never going to miss an opportunity to play the Washington franchise, even though they have a new owner and everything. He's got an axe to grind with that organization. So I have a hard time thinking he's going to miss that game. Aaron Banks said that he re-aggravated the turf toe. I thought it was a groin based on the replay, because you could see his left foot. He was trying to anchor with his left foot, and then it just slid out from under him, and he almost did like a full split. And I was like, oh, that's probably a groin. But it sounds like it was that turf toe injury. So we'll see, we'll see what happens there. If Feliciano then has to move to the left and Burford plays right guard, we don't know. But it doesn't sound like there were any injuries in this game that are going to linger or affect the team and their full health moving forward. So that's obviously a good thing. And, you just, like you said, it's a turn the page game. And now you focus on Washington, and then that last game at home against the Rams. But here's the other thing with that Rams game, and I don't know if this will be the case because, you know, the Rams rested starters under Sean McVay and didn't perform well in the playoffs, but the Rams could wrap up a playoff spot before that Week 17 game and not have anything to play for. So that could be a situation where you don't necessarily see the full complement of Rams as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, if you're locked into whatever the 6th seed or whatever it is, why risk Stafford? You know, maybe play him at half and get him out. So yeah, that's right. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Rams, dude, I gotta give, as much as I hate them, you gotta give McVay and Stafford and those guys credit. They've just absolutely turned it around. Kyron Williams, you know, they found Puka, and like they look like a really good team right now. They can not only can they make the playoffs, I think they can win.
Make noise, yeah,
make some noise. Not win the Super Bowl, but I mean they could win their first round match.
Sure.
For sure.
And I feel like that just goes to show, like, in the NFL, if you've got a quarterback, you're always in a season. You're always in a season. If you've got a quarterback,
Stafford's terrific.
Yeah, you're always in. You know, we shit all over the Rams before the season. Talked about they could be competing for the number 1 overall pick, like, and just didn't take into account that Matthew Stafford's a really good quarterback, and Sean McVay is a really good coach and a really good play caller. And if you've got that combo, then you're likely going to be able to make some noise. And last year Stafford was hurt a lot. And I don't think we really talked enough about that for why they performed the way that they did. And Stafford's been healthy all season, and, you know, Cooper Kupp is back, and Puka Nacua is a revelation, and Kyron Williams is giving them a running game for the first time in 3 seasons. And all of a sudden they're back. Their defense isn't as nearly as good. And that's going to likely be the downfall of the team. But that offense is really good.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers for Kittle. So he's got, in his career right now, he's got 6,245 yards. Third all time for the 49ers is Dwight Clark. He's got 6,750. So Kittle's going to be there. I mean, not this season, but early next season. He's going to be third all time in 49ers history in receiving yards. And awesome. Owens is at 8,572. He theoretically could catch him by the time he's all said and done. And Rice is at 19,000 and change. That's not happening. His yards per game, 64.4. That's 5th all time and 4th in the modern era. Dave Parks is 3rd, but he played in the 60s. And it's Rice, Owens, and Anquan Bolden was at 65.9. So he's a little bit ahead of Kittle. So holy shit with Kittle, the career he's playing. This is a tight end, man. Yeah. Just the career that he's put together for the 49ers. I mean, you're seeing a 49ers legend in front of you, you know, one of your all-time 49ers playing right now. You know, a guy that's been with the franchise his whole career and is going to go down as one of the all-time guys. It's really cool to see. Yeah, I love it. I love George. Love that he's on my team. All right, Brian. So this sucked, but you know what? Washington, the Niners, we'll talk about it, but they probably put up 40 on them because Washington sucked. That defense is awful. The Jets just put up 30. Yeah. So that game's coming at the right time. Again, I hope everybody had a good Christmas. I hope it didn't ruin your Christmas too much. And I hope people feel better than I do today. Don't drink as much as your friend Al on Christmas. So show some self-control, people. Yeah, but we'll be back later this week to preview that Washington game. And again, you know, wash this off, you know, and just look forward, because again, the team is 11-4 and still in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed. All is not lost. The sky is not falling. And hey, if the 49ers get an opportunity to meet this Ravens team again, you know, I think they would relish that. And I think things will at least look different. Whether the result is different, I don't know, but I definitely think things would look different for sure. What would the over-under for Christian McCaffrey carries be in that game? You think 35? I was gonna say, 60. Yeah, it's gonna be the Jimmy. It's gonna be the Packers game plan, the NFC Championship game against the Packers game plan. Eight passes, 50 touches for CMC in that game. All right, we'll see. All right, we're out of here. For Al, I'm Brian. Later. 9-0-3. 1, 2, 3.
2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.